Record everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for what is sure to be an amazing presentation. I'm going to read Gabriel's bio really quickly, and then after that, the floor is his. All right, Gabriel A. Greaves is a professor of African and African Diaspora Studies with Kennesaw State University and a teacher with Atlanta Public Schools. Gifted middle grades social science. He is also an ambassador, research assistant for veteran teacher activists with the National Council of Elders. He previously worked as the program's education coordinator for the Prince George's African American Museum and Cultural Center from 2019 to January of 2022, using his skills to create innovative virtual education programs in collaboration with Prince George's County's public schools, the Smithsonian Freedmen Bureau Transcription Project, the Smithsonian Folklife Institute, and several other organizations. Moreover, he has worked as a moderator with the Prince George's County Lynching Memorial Project in collaboration with the Prince George's County National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, and the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project. Gabriel is a KSU Masters of American Studies alumnus with a background in Afro-Latino studies, the Civil Rights era, Christianity in the Americas, and the social impact of religious worldviews. He is also of Afro-Caribbean descent, specifically from Coromantee in Jamaica, Barbados, Bajan, Bajan, I should know how to say that, West Indian Hispanics in Panama, and Gullah Black Seminoles. Having grown up in a multi-ethnic, multi-generational home, he loves educating through oral histories and showing the complexities of racial cultural identities. He is passionate for community development as well as utilizing movement journalism and historical activism in order to promote the notion of the beloved community as Dr. Martin Luther King popularized. This has also been expressed in the work he has done leading educational panels on Afro-Indigenous cultures within Maryland, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Nova Scotia, and further. Gabriel has long believed that history is a means for healing. He enjoys seeing history, genealogy used as a way to empower others. He loves working as a historian, educator, and interdisciplinary researcher who has worked within community outreach, grassroots organizing for over 14 years. And yet you look like a baby. He enjoys traveling around the world, connecting with Indigenous and African diasporic communities in multiple countries as he seeks to link diverse communities together in their ancestral stories.
Amen.
And again, Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And now I'm going to make you the host.
Okay.
All right, let me make sure I know how to do this.
Okay, I'm looking up.
Okay, there. So you are now the host.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
And all I gotta do, I see it now. And I gotta work at the same. I gotta admit people at the same time. Cool. We're gonna work this out. So I hope you guys are doing awesome tonight. I am very, very thankful to be here with every single one of you. And I thank God, the creator, for allowing us to have the space to have the conversations that we can have together. I was just talking to students and parents alike recently. We're mentioning that we are the answer. We are an answer to our ancestors' prayers. I always like to make certain when I go into presentation or discussion that that's understood, that you and I are at any and all times, even when we don't recognize it, living out the fulfillment of someone else's prayers that came before us. So it's really important for me to make certain that the conversation has that grounding, that context, and that contextualization, so that we don't recognize something that's not there. It's important for me, before we present, to let you guys know that I tend to think in terms of genealogies, because I think in terms of like a relay race, all those who have come before me, who have passed the baton. And unlike a track where it is limited in how many times we can go around the lane, I think about our genealogies as being able to take multiple paths, multiple trajectories to wherever it takes us. So while I'm thankful for my grandmother, as an example, I'm thankful for my grandmother being, proud Gullah, proud Black Seminole. I'm also thankful for the fact that she encouraged us and all of her kids. She encouraged us to know that our trajectories will in many ways take us beyond just that. Because we have the right to evolve to become even more nuanced and more multifaceted than our ancestors. That's part of the legacy we carry. So just want to lay that out there. Before we start, does anyone have any quick questions for me just to get some casual conversation going while we are having a combo tonight? Does anyone have any quick questions they would like to know about, whether it be knowing about more who I am or things that just been in your mind? Just
You
give
know,
some.
something that I had never heard before was the term traveling journalism.
Oh
If you
yeah,
could expand upon that.
yeah. Traveling journalism, travel journalism. If you think about people that do vlogs or blogs, you actually can. It's a way of going around the world like movement journalists. You can go to spaces that people don't know about and then document on your own educational journeys what you're learning about. So, as an example, whenever I go to other countries, I'm always going to do a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to go to the local library of every country I go to. I'm going to go to the library. Then I'm gonna go to their museums. And on the way, I will film and photograph every single thing that I see, the encounters I have with people, and I'll put that on YouTube or put that in Facebook, photographic journalism, so that people can see in living time what places and cultures are like, instead of just hearing about it through secondhand and for secondhand spaces and having stereotypes. And travel is a way to get people inspired to see the world that you live in, to not live isolated or to think that it's impossible to actually encounter people in places we haven't gone to, if that makes sense. And I love doing that. That's actually one of the things that motivates me for the travels around the world that I have had. Speaking of which, can I go ahead and do something? I'm just going to dive right in um, to some
Whatever you
stuff.
want to do. Thank you for that explanation too.
Of course, of course. Now, let me see if I.
Gabriel, before you start, let me just say this at the risk of sounding shameless and self-serving. This is long overdue. I'm glad we finally got you up here, bro.
Long, yeah.
Okay,
All
I
things
said it. There
in
you
due
go. I'll shut up for the time
time.
being.
Long things in due time, long things. But I'm very thankful. I think I really believe in the concept of what we call divine appointments, divine timing. Um, Funny enough, the reason I say that is because I know we have had conversations about, our kinship and about the things happening around the world. And yet I think in the era we live in, can I just go there tonight just to be direct? I don't like to speak with filter. So in the era we live in, where there has been such an assault on educators and on people teaching the full history of our country in the United States and around the world, I think it's a blessing to be speaking at all about this. To give you guys a heads up, yes, I am an educator. Yes, I love teaching on the collegiate level, but I love teaching in middle school. And yes, we just had an amazing project that I did for kids where they had to study not just the Trail of Tears in Georgia, but the multiple trailer tiers that happen across the US. And I made certain that they knew about what we call, of course, the Saltwater Railroad. Many had no idea before we had class in eighth grade. They had never even heard of such a thing. They didn't even know that the Seminole Wars were intimately tied to those seeking freedom from chattel enslavement. They were just told, I had someone tell me, we were just told that it was just a bunch of Indian wars. We had no idea that this was the beginning of the Underground Railroad in many respects. And recently, I told the kids on top of that about people like Gabriel Prosser. Now, Prosser is not his last name, but Gabriel was the man who led in Virginia in 1800. He led the first major slave revolt of three. Denmark Vesey, who was last, and Nat Turner, who came right after him in the year 1800 after Thomas Jefferson was elected president. I talk to students as well as to adults and other spaces about how when the Haitian Revolution took place, counter to what many learned in the classroom, Toussaint Louverture, Toussaint was in good standing with both President John Adams, who was a devout abolitionist, and with Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton himself was born in the island nation of Nevis and St. Kitts. And Hamilton and John Adams recognized the importance of standing with someone who was willing to fight for the ideals of freedom. But for many after that, they had no idea. They would have no idea about the major slave revolts or those who were fleeing down out of chattel enslavement into Spanish Florida and joining with the tribes there to become part of the new people, Seminola, the Seminoles, and so forth, right? So I say all that because in a time where so much of that history is being literally abolished, it's a blessing to be able to give kids the receipts. And I really believe, like Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to deal with strong children than broken men, if I said it the right way. And I want to say that to everyone before we start in depth. It's really important for us to know our own role in history as educators, where we are. I mean, I have the power of a president or a president's administration. I do have power over what history I give to my kids, those under my charge. You and I have history of what we're doing right now, and we are the ones who've been waiting for. So let me go to this share button real quick. I think it's Google Chrome, right? Can y'all all see my screen? Y'all see that right now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Praise God. Not a research with the best of them, but I still struggle with some things with social media. True story, true confession. I graduated from high school in 2004. So that was the era that we had prior to Facebook, MySpace. So
Yeah.
you know, see, I know some, you know what I'm talking about. It's just different talking to kids now to see what they're used to information-wise. That they've had several that wonder when they see all my books, how do you read all these books and yet you have so many tabs open? And I told them there are some things that are easier for me based on how I learn and based on how my mind processes the world. As also someone who is neurodivergent and has a photographic memory, but also has to process shifting through so many things. And I told kids, that's my identity. I had to learn how to find myself. And that's why it's important for us as we have conversation to learn how to find people in our own histories and what gets passed on. I want to share some stuff real quickly to dive right in. Y'all all see this picture right here? So tonight we're going to talk about genealogies, of course, and about the history of knowing your genealogy. But I want to start off by saying why it's important for all of us to carry who we are in whatever space. This picture shows a man in Matsuyama. Last summer in July, I was able to stay for nearly a month in Japan with friends who have taught English there for 19 years. Some have taught it for longer. And while I went there, I went to this museum, Matsuyama, and I was stunned to see this photo. At one point, my friend and I, who teaches English there, we were walking through the museums, and she said, let's just go check this museum out in Matsuyama. I wanted to see what the people were like. I had just found out from my grandmother after doing DNA testing through 23andMe, as well as myancestry.com and a couple of others. We found out that my grandmother, while she is, of course, proudly Gullah and Seminole, we found out that she actually has strong Filipino roots. And then later on, Japanese roots. And I was stunned until I did some further research and remembered what happened with the Spanish Empire when the Spaniards came through and they took over places in the Philippines, and they, Acapulco, I believe, they actually they had Spanish galleons. They took lots of... What's up? So they took Spanish galleons down all the way to Mexico, and then the Filipinos, they escaped as Maroons. They fled off the boats and got all the way into the bayou of Louisiana and Mississippi, and they intermingled with the Africans as well as some of the Seminoles later on. And so that's also something that has updated my understanding of the world. And that inspired me to go back to Japan. So we found out that many who were deported from Japan in the era of the samurai, they were sent to the Philippines. So fast forward all that. I saw this picture in Japan, and I was blown away seeing this. This is from 1869, guys, 1869. One of the laborers, and he was one of several. Now, this audience, tell me, does that look like, you tell me if I'm off on this. This is to give you an open conversation. When I see this, of course, I see the eye speeches, but I see a Black man. Is that what y'all see when y'all look at this? Give me some feedback. I like to have interactive. What do y'all see when you see this picture? That's what I see. I see a dark-skinned Black man. And that doesn't surprise me because I was told growing up that many of the people in the diaspora had also gone to Far East Asia. They carry their African roots with them, but they intermingle with an entirely different culture. Again, just for y'all to see firsthand, these are some of the photos showing people who were not only fully Japanese, but they were also of African ancestry. I immediately talked to my friend about it. She showed these pictures to the people in her church. They were stunned. She said, what do you think about this? And the response she told me was they were like, Um, we can't deny that. And we found out that in Japan, when it comes to diasporic history, in Japan, they know about the people in ancient history who are of our complexion, who also have African roots, while also having East Asian roots. They just don't talk about it a lot because of what happened when the Americans and when people from Europe opened up Japan by force and they started to promote colonialism and conditioning anti-Blackness in the sense of people thinking that the lighter you were, the better you were. And so people, they know about the history here. They just don't care to focus on it. Whereas in other spaces, they will suppress this kind of history because they don't want people to know about it. These are some other photos, of course, showing more people from this part of the world who are, of course, fully Japanese, but of course have African ancestry as well. And I just want to make sure that some people can see one more thing. Just for some examples, that right there, when I went to see ancient world cultures and to see more about the history of people of African ancestry or who have certain complexion features, I went to see this is in Nara, Japan. Nara was the old capital of Japan, and Nara itself has one of the oldest wooden structures in the world. That is a picture of me in front of that particular Buddha statue. It's one of the largest Buddha statues in the world. And I remember reading from people like he wrote a book on Africans in Asia. He talked about how in Japan they understood about the history of people who are of dark complexion and of African ancestry and have been present in the conversation the entire time, but they are mixed out. So when I went and saw firsthand these large Buddha statues, I was shocked. I thought, that's one time, is it more common than that? And sure enough, when I went, turns out this is also Matsuyama in the same spot where I saw the pictures of dark-skinned Japanese ancestry, people of African ancestry as well. These are pictures of the Buddha that they actually have in Matsuyama, Japan, from the Silk Road
Gabriel,
era.
can I interject you for a second? I have a question.
What's up?
The book you're referring to, would that possibly be the African presence in early Asia?
Yes, that is it. Yep.
Okay, I just want, while the Nuriba's working, I just wanted to
yeah, that's the
clarify
book.
that.
That's
Real
the book.
quick, if I may, that's Runoko Rashidi's work, correct?
Yes.
Got you. Okay, perfect.
Well, they're a collection of essays, but it was actually put together by Ivan Van Sertimer.
Yeah. And yeah,
that particular work, but I won't interrupt anymore.
No. You please. I love interactive feedback. I actually have that book with me somewhere, but I'll come back and get it later. I brought that book with me to Japan, and I can tell you this: it blew my mind to see things firsthand. Because again, it's one thing to hear about it; it's a whole different thing. One, to go fully as you are, understanding your ancestry, understanding the tribes you come from, and two, to see things firsthand. I came back and I had people that were shocked. I had one person in my family that said, "Is that really dark skin? I mean, how could it be something that was there if everyone didn't know about it?" And I had to let them know, why are you surprised that this kind of history is not seen as easy? Why are you and I shocked when we know how colonialism works? And it works by either erasing ancestry outright or giving us false categories. You can only be Seminole or Bajan. You can't be both. You can only be Muskogee or Kenyan if you have multi-ethnic ancestry. You can't be both. We have the right to be every single thing that comes before us. And when I went to Japan and I saw the things firsthand, when I saw the iconography directly, it made me realize this is why we have to expand some of our conversations beyond just talking about the African diaspora or the Seminole Wars or what happened with the Black Seminoles. We need to have those conversations, but it's important for us to expand our dialogue to talk about what life looked like for the places that some of our ancestors had a divergence and went elsewhere, so that we can reconnect with their ancestors, their descendants later on. I had a couple of conversations after seeing these icons of people of African descent, people of darker complexion who were part of ancient world history. And at several points in Japan, I was blown away by people that were excited to hear about my Gullah roots, and my Black Seminole roots. They were excited to hear about Black folks in Japan. Truth be told, if y'all didn't know about it, they actually have events like Celebrate Jamaica, Reagan Fest, Jamaica Fest. They love people from Jamaica. They love people from Barbados. They love Black folks. And when I brought up the Black Seminole Gullah experience, they were excited about it, especially those who also had tribal ancestry as well. They were excited about it. They were just surprised that so many didn't know back home here in the US about what relevance we have to the world. Am I speaking too fast, by the way, or is it making sense what I'm saying? Cool, cool. Again, I just want to show y'all a couple of things real quick. Let me go back to my PowerPoint and make sure that everything's good. I'll show you that. Let me show you something else. I'm going to go now to a couple other things. Let me get out of this. I'm going to go to the photos that I had here. And I'm just going to show you some of the photos in real time that I had. This guy right here. He is, let me bring this. There's a book I have right here. It's looking kind of blurry, but it's called The Ainu, from National Geographic Spirit of the Northern People. I want to share some of this real quick because I want you guys to understand why it was a big deal for me to go as somebody of Gullah and Seminole ancestry to go and visit these spaces. When I went to Japan, I didn't just go to learn more about some of the things in my grandmother's ancestry. I also went specifically to see the history of people who were in that spot who also had similar struggles with displacement. We all know about, I'm assuming we all, based on the conversation people have had here, we know about the impact of displacement when it comes to forced relocations, and then on top of that, forcing people to change their very identities to fit the new spots they go to when cultures and tribes have been wiped out. When I went to Japan, I had long hoped to visit, for years in the making, I had long hoped to visit a people called the Ainu. If you don't know about it, the Ainu were the actual original people of the upper part of Japan in Hokkaido. Hokkaido, from Sapporo to where I went when I went to Abashiri. And in Hokkaido, there was an indigenous group of people that had been there for generations. The Yamato people in the lower parts of Japan, they came through and they annexed the tribes in Hokkaido. And they have fought tooth and nail for generations. This individual, he's one of the men that I met there. He was actually, when I met him there, he was teaching people how to do traditional crafts, because working with wood and craftsmanship there is a really big deal. He also showed us things in regards to some of the cultural vestments and so forth they make in that part of the world. And again, I was blown away to see this history, guys. I was astounded. But at one point, as we were talking, he shared with me some of the thoughts that he had about my visit there. I didn't actually see too many people, not too many Black folks who were there, and I felt I was one of the first because not that many people would go to the very top of Japan to go to this museum, the National Museum of the Ainu, right? I had gone here to meet people, and he and I started to have a conversation. I asked him at one point, and I'm just going through photos while I'm talking, just to be clear, so you guys can kind of see visually what I'm talking about. I asked him at one point, heads up, man, you are Ainu. I'm also indigenous and a fellow tribal man. My people are the Black Seminoles and the Gullahs, but that's just on my paternal side. I also have ancestry in regards to the Bajans, the Coromantee, who also did work with the Kalinago and so forth. And I wanted to ask you more questions about what your experience has been here. He seemed a little nervous when we were talking. And at one point, as we were talking, he asked me, so can I ask what your reason is for asking these questions? And I told him, I have heard rumors of how the Ainu were displaced, and I just wanted to get your thoughts about it, because I was told that this museum shows the national history of the First Nations here in Japan. And so he later on, when he realized who I was, and I referenced the work here, actually, and there was several other spaces, he said, truth be told, it's not safe for us to have this conversation in many places. Now, I want y'all to hear what I just said. In a national museum for the First Nations of Japan, the people that were just acknowledged within the recent less than decades over time, they were just acknowledged as the original people. He said, at this museum, it's not fully safe to have this conversation, but I'm glad you're having it. And I asked him, tell me why. What's the deal? I came to you. There was no one else there but him and I. And so I told him I came to you to ask directly, what's up? Why is it not safe? And he said, unfortunately, like many of the museums and historical spaces around the world in America, they have a happily ever after narrative. They made it seem, because they gave us a national museum, they make it seem as if they returned everything that they took from us, and now we're besties. They, in the national government of Japan, have made it seem as if the Ainu and the other peoples of Japan have reconciled. But this museum is not under our control. They ask us to volunteer here, though they have not returned the bodies of our ancestors when they annexed Hokkaido and the other parts of the top part of Japan into the Japanese Empire. They have not acknowledged the fact that we still have to deal with land rights and being forced out, and we have no full ownership of our own ancestral spaces. This is on top of things that happen in Japan, such as people struggling if they have multi-ethnic ancestry because of how homogenous it is. Like I mentioned to you guys earlier, there were Black folks in Japan, to be fair. I'm going to tell you more about it in a minute. But for the Ainu, they struggle with people in that museum not discussing the ongoing assaults on the identities of Ainu and First Nations in Japan, as well as those in the southern part of Japan, the Ryuski, if I said it the right way, if I said it the wrong way, I apologize. In Okinawa, that's where they locate the indigenous people of Okinawa and so forth. He mentioned to me, we're still struggling right now in this particular area of the world because people don't acknowledge that we are not full citizens here. And so again, when I talked to him, I was shocked. I was shocked that he shared this history with me. And I asked him in person, okay, so I saw a lot of stuff at the museum. I'm showing you pictures at the same time of what I saw, by the way. I said, I saw a lot of things that broke down extensive history of the Ainu. And I thought that they did a pretty good job of discussing your culture, but where would I go if I wanted to learn more about who is in full control? As someone who is proudly Gullah, where would I go? Because I can understand having people piece out my story and share the parts they're comfortable with. And he told me, go to a spot called Nibutani Kotan. Nibutani Kotan is a land that we own as indigenous people. And since you're Gullah, I think you'll appreciate it because you have issues with land as well. Are y'all tracking me so far on what I'm saying? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So now that we're here,
Gabriel, are you sliding through the pictures? Because there's just...
I'm sliding through it still.
Oh, well, the screen isn't changing.
It's just stuck.
No.
And Karina just sent a message. She can't see the pictures.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry about that. Hold up. Can y'all see it now?
No, it's just stuck on your, it looks like a tab, like your, it's two pictures.
Let me do this. Let me go back. I'm sorry about that.
Were you going through pictures the whole time?
Yeah. What was the last picture y'all saw? Oh, wow. Hold up. Can y'all see that now? Can y'all see now?
Yeah, now we see that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Woo. Okay, cool. I'm sorry. Wow. See, I was in my Google. Okay, that's what happened. I was in my Google Slides online. You see pictures now? Cool. All right, cool. Woo. Let's go back. Let's start this over. This guy right here. Can y'all see him? All right, cool. Praise God. So this guy, like I mentioned, he is the guy who I talked to. He is Ainu. He's the guy who I talked to, and we're friends online now. He was the one who told me, if you have a chance, don't just go to this national museum. And since I am a museum educator by trade, I said, okay, I get it. Where do I go to hear more of the full story that you guys had? And he told me, for you, go to a spot that we have called Nibutani Kotan. These are some pictures, again, of the items that he helped to create as a craftsman. Beautiful craftsmanship. They have a lot of focus as it concerns honoring the spirits in nature and honoring their people. But again, for him and many others, he says it's the only time they can get to share their culture in a museum that's dedicated to them. They have to volunteer to share their history in a space that still doesn't even acknowledge their history. Kind of sound familiar? That's kind of the struggle. And I was amazed when he told me, go to the spot that we actually have full land ownership. This museum was made with the government after we begged for them to give us representation. But at this museum space, they piece out our history to make us have a happy history, a happy history. They do not really understand who we are, and they don't understand what our struggle was like as Ainu, as First Nations people. So I'm going to show you something real quick. Can y'all see, you can still see pictures still, right? Do y'all see the picture of the guy from Matsuyama, the dark-skinned guy? You saw that picture? Y'all see that one? Okay, cool. So I'm going to show you some of the other things real quick. This right here, you see I had thousands of pictures, but I'm going to go right here. I changed my flight plan at one point to stay in town because I only had so much time. And so at one point I prayed and said, you know what? I'm just going to change everything up, and I'm just going to change my flight ticket. I only had so much money. Travel journalism 101. If you want to stay in place the document, don't be bougie. Do not be bougie. If you want to stay at an Airbnb or on someone's couch, you will save money and you'll have a fun time. For me, I was on a limited budget as a teacher. You know how that goes. So God opened the door for me to actually stay where I was, to change my flight plan. I only had 4 hours, guys. 4 hours. I don't know how I did it. I'm a little bit perplexed still, but I had only 4 hours, and I had to only get there by bus because that's all I had available. There was no taxi available. All I had was Google Translate on my phone and prayer. That's me landing finally in Nibutani Kotan. Nibutani Kotan is, again, the land that's actually owned exclusively by the Ainu. And again, I was on a journey. I knew that the answers are guiding me. I knew that I was on mission to meet people there in that space, right? So as I went, and again, this is a book, by the way, for those who don't know, this is a book of this book right here. Let me show you the title of it. If you're interested, I'm in my LeVar Burton reading rainbow mode. The Conquest of Ainu Lands. This is a really good book that talks about the illegal expansion of the Ainu and how the Japanese, the Yamato clan, they took over the peoples of northern Japan. But I was reading this book as I was on the journey, right? And I was literally praying the whole time, Lord, I only have so much time and money, and I'm on this bus. My Google Translate helped me out. And the people of Japan are beautiful people, by the way. They're very warm, very gracious people. They love manners, and they will take care of you if you know who they are, right? I went in having no idea what I would find when I went to Hokkaido. And then finally, when the bus pulled up, I was stunned to think they understand the importance of land ownership. And they only have one strip of land in all of Japan that belongs to them. This small strip right here, Nibutani Kotan. When I went there, I was so amazed to see how proud they were. At one point, I felt like I was in Appalachia. I felt like I was in Tennessee. It didn't feel like Japan at that point. I thought, this don't feel like Japan. This feels like Tennessee to me. There's that kind of kinship. It was there. I went inside their museums. I saw the actual houses and the homes they lived in. And I was just so thankful to, again, be there representing for my people and my clan, you know, being there with the people and just seeing all the rich history that was present there. And I want to show you something else that stunned me real quick. Because again, I went there knowing there are people of African descent who travel all over the world, including people who are the ancestors of the Gullahs. That's something that was known in world history with ancient kingdoms, right? So I was looking for people who are part of this conversation. And I want to show you one of the pictures that floored me. When I went in, I was stunned. Some of the people there were a little shocked that I walked in the door, and part of me thought, you probably weren't planning on Black folks walking in to get to the ends of the earth to find you guys. But I'm here. Brought my cell phone out, and I said, I'm just here to honor your culture, but I'm also here to get these receipts. I'm looking to show you this right here. And when I saw that picture, I was stunned. The woman, the guy with the sunglasses on, I was stunned and thought, you are probably Ainu, but that's a Black man. That's a Black man with the sunglasses on. And I was stunned, and I saw the photos firsthand and thought, so they probably weren't planning on people seeing this. I had to go to the ends of the earth at the very top of the world to see what they had always wanted, what we always had made available, but people didn't have the interest of the time to go there. Let me show you another picture. You see the complexion of the man right there at the very bottom. These were darker skin complexions of people, which is why many of them in this part of the world, I didn't feel like a stranger at all. Even my flight got delayed These people bent over backwards to take care of me. And again, I was stunned seeing the rich history that they had there and the kinship. Another picture. When you see the actual hues and so forth. No, I'm not saying that everyone Japanese is African, but I am saying that the kinship, as it concerns colorism and things that our people have gone through, guess what? They understood it there too. Because in that part of the world, it's not hidden. They just know that in other parts of Japan, they don't like talking about it because of colonialism. And they can understand what Gullahs and others have gone through as well when it came to land displacement and having their own conversations shifted to have a version of tribal identity that fits the national narrative. Am I making sense to everyone so far? Give me some interjections. What do you think so far what we're talking about? Because I want to hear some feedback. I want to make sure we have a group combo.
Well, Gabriel, I'm not going to hopefully hijack the conversation. This is so deep to me and hitting me like a sledgehammer. I actually get and watch a lot of Japanese programming. I have the NHK channel. I've seen programs from that museum, and now that you're giving the background of it, it's wow. And I've also been honored to have met some of our Ainu relatives that have come here. You know, I've been both as a dancer and singer on the Powwow Trail in the East. One of the local drums, the Haina Second Sons, for about a year and a half, had an Ainu brother from Japan on the drum with us. So again, it was just honored, you know, as our Lakota relations say, Mitaku Yeo Yasin, we're all related. This is coming full circle for me. And also, it was interesting you started out with the thing about Yasuke because, you know, I'm also a student and a fan of film from all around the world. I remember back in the 70s seeing some martial arts films from Japan that had Black samurai characters in them. And they would just touch on it. They wouldn't get into a whole historical thing because it was fictionalized. But yeah, these journeys happened and these exchanges and interactions went down, definitely. I'm going to really go off on a tangent right here, though. I'll say this as a musician, and I'm not their agent, but if y'all ain't hip to it, check out the band Tokyo Groove Jiyoshi. There's some Japanese ladies, they're jazz funk. Them ladies are funky. I'll leave it at that. But bro, keep going. Because I don't want to hijack this, but wow, it's really enlightening when I see the museum. And also, let me just backtrack. Some of their dwellings look like some of what our Creek relatives did at one point in terms of housing, how they were constructed before those relatives were forced into what is now called Florida, and then a whole other thing went down. So yeah, again, we're all related. I'll shut up for now.
Ainu
Can you hear that, by the way?
actually own the land they're in. This is the only site in Hokkaido where the Ainu not only have traditional villages, but they own this land. Their main issue as indigenous peoples, the original indigenous people of Japan, is land. That's all they wanted.
That's all they want. The
I have
land.
a question. What is the population for that strip?
I don't want to miscount. I'll have to go back and verify.
Even if it's just an estimate, I was just curious. And what you call a strip is like a 5 acres by 10 acres or
about 12 acres. Actually, no, it's a little bit more than that. So I'm gonna show you a picture real quick if I can find it. To my knowledge, about 500 people or less.
okay.
Many of those people, just to be clear, let me show you something else. I'm gonna jump ahead real quick. But many of them, because the government has forced them off of their lands, they had to leave in order to survive. This particular part that I went to right here, this is called the forest in Nibutani, and this particular area, as you can see in the bottom, the woodlands in the area play a major role for both the people who live in the region and the promotion of Ainu culture. Recently, people have been planting specific trees to maintain the forest. The reason why is because the government tried to push in and remove, I would say like 20 acres or more. It's probably more than that from what I remember, but it was a pretty sizable piece of land. But it's compared to the rest of Hokkaido, which is pretty massive, it's pretty small. The entirety of Hokkaido belongs to them, but the government only gave them a very small part at the very bottom, southwestern part of Hokkaido. That river was a life-giving river that I'm showing you guys, the Sawu River, if I said the right way, beautiful river, but that river has been polluted. That river was also up for grabs, and many in the Japanese government tried to force the people off of their lands. And so very similar to what many tribes here in the US went through, they had to fight to keep that part of their land. And again, that's on top of having the battles with colorism, where people were told to be ashamed of those who were the darker kin. In Southeast Asia, there are people, of course, like in the Philippines or in parts of Southeast India, who have darker complexion. In that part of the world, the darker you are, the more you're considered to be a part of the labor caste. And so there were already some issues that went with that. That's why many in that part of the world, as well as worldwide, struggle with understanding that even Buddha and other iconic figures had darker complexion. And the pictures and the statues I just showed you guys earlier, that shouldn't shock people. Because again, it was normal to see people who were part of world history who looked, who had darker hues. But again, colonialism erased a lot of that. And so when you think about it in these terms, you think about the Japanese government pushing out the indigenous people at the very top part of what became the nation of Japan, and then also having to deal with colonialism being forced upon them when Matthew Perry and his black ships came through the open Japan. And many of them adapted by choosing to adopt anti-blackness or policies and mindsets that said that darker complexion means you're a threat. You can see why some of these struggles happen for the Ainu, why some of the brothers who had darker complexion didn't fit in as well. One of the things I saw in Japan that blew my mind was that I was told women and men, and by the way, can you see my mouse real quick? Can you see where the mouse is on the screen? That mouse, Nibatari Kotan, is right here. That small little piece. Not much. But what's funny in Japan, when it comes to complexion, people actually wore sweaters. They wear sweaters to the beach, and they bring umbrellas because they're so fearful of getting their skin too dark. That's how ingrained certain things are. That's one of the beautiful ladies I met, by the way. She does traditional embroidery because, again, that's really important for their culture. I'm gonna play this little video if it shows up for me.
English. My first language was Spanish. This is Ainu right here. This is
Ainu design.
Oh wow, this is beautiful.
This is
And I'm gonna show you some other stuff real quick.
This right here.
Huh?
You were showing me this earlier.
Please.
Yeah.
A picture?
Yeah.
Dozo.
Dozo.
Please.
This is the traditional. Thank you. Traditional Ainu.
Ainu design.
Design.
So glad God.
For ceremony?
Huh?
For ceremony? What's it for? Ainu, what do you use this for?
To ceremony.
Oh, okay, cool.
Ceremony.
Wow.
You can see an Ainu museum. This same.
Oh wow. How long have you been making these?
3 months.
Wow. Your design is amazing.
By the way,
thank you.
A little heads up. The reason that they made that particular part of the world so important for them as well is they invited Ainus to come and live traditionally as their ancestors, since at one point they weren't even allowed to live in homes built the way they were. So many of the people that you see in these videos live in that particular part. She's in her actual home that she stays in, that she made available for people. And it was such an honor and privilege, again, to be here and to see the people firsthand. And I was so thankful, again, just to be part of seeing the literal history. The whole time I was there, guys, I want y'all to understand, I never stopped being true to who my identity was that Creator gave me. I was so thankful to think I'm amongst some of the few Gullahs who have walked into this space. Not the first, because they did not seem to be familiar with Black folks in this part of the world. So it was a lot for me to think, I'm a Gullah. I'm the first, I believe, to be in this space, documenting people's history, taking these photos, and actually showing that I was willing to come from all over the world because I had a kinship tie with other indigenous people who also knew what it was like to be displaced, to have family members who had to then go around the world when their ancestors were forced out of an area. And those people who went around the world, they also changed identities as well and became even more nuanced. I can relate to that. I can relate to how that happened when it came to canoe tribes in the islands that work with different people groups, and they even had an underground railroad that took people from Barbados and Jamaica all the way up to North America. I can relate to that, how people have the right to keep changing their identities, and yet later on, when the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs got developed, they started to erase who people could be and say that if it's not on our census or not on our records, then you can't exist. And so to be here seeing people that they fought to keep their identity, and maybe think about some of the parallels that we can learn when it comes to the importance of the Black Seminoles maintaining their heritage. I know, for example, even as you've seen this, they have had attacks on their personage. They've had attacks on their land and on their history. And when when the sign for John Horse was finally placed up not too long ago, and they defaced it, and people had to fight to put it back up. Y'all remember that? I remember thinking there are people in the tribes who may not like the other stories they don't want to hear about. And you got to fight to keep that story going. It's like folks here fought to keep their history. This, again, is the largest repository of Ainu documents and Ainu artifacts in the world, and it's owned entirely by them. They have to fight. They have to continually fight for this because the national government of Japan did not want people coming to this spot first rather than going to their National Museum of the Ainu. That was a good museum, to be clear, but it didn't have nearly as much of stuff as this one or let people tell their stories. So, again, I just wanted to show you guys some of that. I want to show you something else that concerns the embroideries that I saw in Abashari at the very top. Because one thing I saw when I went to this is me on a train ride when I got stuck at a train station because the train just stopped at one point, and I had nowhere to go, and so I slept in the train station. Woke up the next morning, there was a man at the train station. I swear he's an angel. I really believe that because he was in the same train station as me, had an iPod. We're in the middle of nowhere. I woke up, he was gone. And I ended up walking around the grounds and seeing some of the beautiful parts at the very top of the world in Abashari. And it was just really, really cool to see just the richness, the history there. But let me go back to what I was telling you guys about. When I was in Abashari, guys, I got to see even more of some of the history. Let me show you some other books. Some of these books are rare to find books. Where's the other book at? There's one where, again, I saw it and I thought, these guys know that people have darker complexion. Here it is right here. Cities at the End of the Earth. It talks about people living in the Arctic, peoples who, again, have darker complexion. You see that one gentleman right there at the very bottom? Y'all see that? Again, it's not they don't know, they just don't talk about it. But here, they are very much aware of who they are, and they had several of these books here presently for people. Some things geographically don't surprise me because how the sun reflects on people's face, but it was just interesting to see how they were proud of the history. I want to show you some other stuff as it concerns the basket. I know, baskets are a really big deal for our cultures, right? And I was stunned when I actually went to this particular part of the museum. Some of these baskets, I looked at them, I thought, wait, I've seen this basket before. That type of grass basket. I've literally seen that basket, and I thought, this is what I would see back home in South Carolina when it comes to kinship. Can y'all see that? I was just stunned thinking that, okay, they have this here. Some will come through and say, oh, that's interesting. I'm thinking, why do y'all have such a similarity to the baskets that we made on the Sea Islands in Beaufort, South Carolina? And of course, back in Sierra Leone, since we brought our traditions, there is some kind of sharing that has been happening here, guys. That's a grass basket from some of the peoples in Russia, because again, Hokkaido at the very top is near Siberia. So, but it's interesting to see they have this. That right there is a grass basket from Canada, 1989. Eskimo, you see some of the cultural commonalities coming through, how some things are very similar. That grass basket is Inuit. And again, I'm just showing you guys that because I want you guys to see just some of those dynamics. I'm not saying that these people were 100% of African origins, obviously, but what I am saying is that there are some kinship, there is some kind of common cultural sharing happening here. And I was so fascinated as a Gullah to see how that was present. What were some of the ties? I already knew that Black folks had come from the African American experience in the African world here, but I was curious how that could be something to explore when it comes to our global ties. Does anyone have any thoughts on what I just said with this, by the way, before I go further? I just want to give people a time to depress and interject. What are you thinking right now from what I'm showing you guys? Again, this is your time to talk. I want to hear what you guys think.
Well, again, we're all related. There's similarities, but it'll be interesting if we could actually at some point get into the stories about how these things came about. Maybe at some point in the diaspora, way back when, somebody's grandfather, grandmother did interact with somebody's other grandfather, grandmother, and these traditions were passed down. It could be, independent, or what's the phrase I'm looking for? well, either mutual acculturation or parallel development. We don't know. But it raises a lot of questions.
Yeah, I think so too. And there's a term called convergent evolution, just for those who may not know, where two different species can live in the same, they can be in two different parts of the world but have similar development. It's like the armadillo versus the pangolin. Pangolins, they both roll up in armored balls. They grew up in two different parts of the world, but they have similar trajectories. You know, I guess it's the same thing when it comes to diaspora. And again, we know that cultures are not completely isolated in every single part of the world. There are cultures that actually shared ideas and exchanges. There was a lot of pushback on certain ideas, like how people of African ancestry did at one point travel the world, and they interacted with people in Eastern cultures, Far East Asian cultures, and they not only shared knowledge, but they actually had knowledge shared with them. And if we see the same thing happening just with canoe tribes across the Caribbean, sharing interactions with each other, if we see the same thing happening when it came to Anansi the spider, Anansi being an African folklore, being brought into indigenous cultures, and we're to the point where the I believe is the Apache also talk about Anansi, but in many places they would say, well, no, he belongs fully to us. We know, no, you got this from somewhere. There's a shared cultural experience here, even though you developed stuff around it. Why would it be impossible when it comes to African ancestry and African cultural traditions in Eastern Asian cultures and vice versa? The larger question, of course, is, are you able to maintain your tribal identity while also being aware that you have the right to develop it further? There were several times where I thought, if I moved over to Japan at some point, if I moved to Japan, I would still bring my cultural heritage with me, and I would think, this is cool. I would love to see more stories about Gullahs in Japan, Gullahs in Far East Asia, Gullahs who actually have a whole different shared experience. And again, let me show y'all some other stuff real quick, just to make sure that y'all can see that. I'm gonna stop sharing this real quick. Because there is something I want you guys to see as it concerns what I also saw when I was in, what part of the world was I? I was in Osaka, sorry, I had my mind got blank. Let me go ahead and put y'all back on screen share. Share screen, photograph. Let's try it again. Can y'all see that right now? Y'all can still see that? This is just for y'all to see when I went there. I went there and I was so blown away when I got there and I saw people having, again, stuff in Jamaica. This is a Rasta shop, reggae shop in Osaka, Japan. Let me play this for y'all real quick. These people love Caribbean cultures. It may be taking a while to load up.
Yes, that is Jamaican music. Yes, Japanese, Jamaicans. Yes, it's pretty dope.
It's in Osaka, one of many places.
That jam is dope. That jam is dope. I don't.
Show you a couple more from this real quick. And again, I had a ball. I had a blast. I had a wonderful time.
Gabriel, let me share a story with you real quick. Many years ago, I'd lost touch, but got in touch with a friend of mine I used to work out with, who's Japanese American. And when I asked what he'd been up to, he said for the first time he went to visit his grandparents in Japan. I said, well, did you have a good time? Now, this guy was from the Upper West Side of Manhattan. He said, no. I go, why? He goes, I couldn't get any plantains. A lot of his friends were Puerto Rican, and he was addicted to Puerto Rican food. He missed plantains, and he couldn't find any in Japan.
That's funny. That's funny. I can understand the struggle, man. I can understand the struggle. But I'm telling you, they actually, in some spaces, it doesn't feel like Japan. It does when you see the sign, when you see, Japanese, of course, being spoken in the written script. But there are times where I thought this don't feel like Japan. Now, in Jamaica, sharing more about my ancestry, there were people who were very much aware of the Cromantes and their ties to Far East Asian cultures. Anyhow, at one point when the slave slave trade was abolished by the British, they brought in other laborers to fill the gaps, and so many came from China. Chinese laborers came to work on the plantations. They weren't necessarily better than those of African ancestry, and the Tainos and the Arawak, who also were, of course, their descendants were fighting there. But they were a buffer. And so you have people of Japanese ancestry in Jamaica. You have people of Japanese and Chinese ancestry in Jamaica. Many of them intermarried and had families with the people there. So growing up, I knew plenty of people who were Chinese Jamaican or Japanese Jamaican, Chinese Cuban, Japanese Dominican. That was a normal conversation. We talked about Caribbean roots, and that's why it was difficult for me growing up when we talked about multi-ethnic genealogy. I saw people saying we've got to talk about our Black Seminole ancestry, our Gullah ancestry. We got to talk about, what happened with people like Paul Kufi, or about Crispus Attucks, whose mother was Wampanoag, and whose father was African. I heard that, but goodness, it was almost as if you only had room for that conversation. The moment I mentioned, well, I have ancestors who are Cromanti, and they also, from what I've been told, have some level of Far East Asian. There was this immediate about face. Well, that's you don't have you have too much in you. Too much. I thought it was enough for us to actually say that we should be able to represent. How is that somehow crossed the threshold of what was too much? And so for me, when I went to Japan, and I saw firsthand their love for people of Caribbean ancestry, and many of them were keenly aware of the slave trade, bringing people from even Jamaica who found refuge there, blew my mind. That's before we got some good food. I gotta play this VCC here where they play. No, my awesome groove, but I just sat there and thought, how is this the normal experience? And again, he actually went to Jamaica and connected with the Cromanti and other people there. And then he proudly represents his accent heritage. He's showing you some pictures of his life in that spot. Some of the food we had, jerk chicken, Japanese jerk chicken. First time for that, but I'm telling you, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I sat there and thought the whole time, now this brother who owns this shop, he lived in Kingston for several years, worked alongside Japanese Jamaicans, brought back some of that cultural heritage to Osaka, which again, if you look it up right now, in fact, type it in your chat box or wherever you have on your phone, look up Reggae Festival, Osaka, Japan. It happens every single year. Bob Marley was actually one of the inspirations for it because Bob Marley came to Japan and they fell in love with the culture, and his music transcended cultures and then merged them together even further. Same thing happened, I believe, for the Hopi tribe as well, that many don't know about, but that's another conversation. So again, I'm saying all this because people didn't stop being who they were culturally. They understood you should know the route that you're on and the right you have to merge your roots even further. You take seeds from a particular plant and plant it in different soil around the world. It takes up the actual traits of the soil, and it grows into a whole different plant, or at least close to where it came from. That's what has also happened for diaspora.
Gabriel, let me interject again. Something else the Japanese do good, and we as Seminole people and our Gullah relatives, the Japanese know how to cook some gator.
They do.
One of the best things I ever had was ginger gator. And it was a Japanese restaurant here in the city that my son turned me on to. Until that restaurant closed down, it was a big thing for me several times a year. I'd go down there. And then I put two and two together. There are only two places in the world that you find alligators. That's in the Southeast United States and in China. And when the Japanese occupied China, well, they learned how to cook gator, man. So if you ever have a chance, check out their ginger grilled gator, man. It is happening. I'm saying my old Florida country boy is talking right now, man. They know what they're doing.
No, I do. Trust me. I think that same thing. And that's relevant in so many ways and stuff. By the way, this picture right here shows the name of the shop. You can look up Corner Shop Chop, Jerk Chicken. You can look it up yourself. There are several of those across the nation of Japan. And I thought it was just the same thing was in Tokyo also.
I was gonna say that's such a hood. I shouldn't say hood. Okay, I can say hood. It's such a hood thing. The corner store. When you said corner shop, I was like, they got a corner store. They got corner stores in Japan.
Right.
I can do that.
I can do that. Which is why we have journalism, because some people have told me, how do you survive? I just wouldn't know what to do. And I thought, okay, get over here. You'll find out, oh, this is downtown. These are my cousins.
If you think about it also, and I know this isn't the reason always, but it's kind of ironic how a lot of corner stores in the hood tend to be Korean, Vietnamese. Ours is Vietnamese. But he's like, a member of the community now, he and his family, because I grew up walking down there playing with his daughter in the back while my dad got free food, because he was a teen parent over here in Northeast Oklahoma City. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just really cool parallels because he and I had a conversation one day about colorism. And
Yeah.
he was telling me, how he has a niece. And I reminded him of his niece. He said, she looks just like you. And, her dad was black. And, it was like, it's hard for her to visit Vietnam. So she doesn't. He was like, but look at me, I'm dark too. And he just went on this whole rant about Koreans. And I'm like, listen, I don't know about y'all's beef, but he was like, no. The Koreans are light and they treat us like you, like dark people. And I was like, okay, I believe you. I was like, I don't want to get to this beef. Like, I got enough beef with some Native people that don't think I'm Native enough. So, it's the black folks that don't think I'm black enough. So I get it. But it's like, yeah. So, yeah. It's a lot of parallels, and I just appreciated hearing, I guess, like that side of things, because colorism is worldwide, like absolutely. And I saw it in the Black community and the Native communities, because my mom's half Ponca and my dad's a Black Seminole. But it's just, yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to go on my soapbox. Lonnie knows my story, and I just met Wendy and Karina, my new cousins. I'm the Oklahoma branch. We're the.
It's good to hear a younger person doing it instead of me for a change.
Huh?
Wait, the photo.
It's good to hear a younger person bringing it up instead of me for a change. The old man ranting over here. So.
Oh yeah.
By the way,
sorry, I didn't want to take up space. Yeah.
No, please. That's why we're here. That have these convos. By the photos you see are going on. Your photos of what the shop was like. When I saw that one,
wow.
I stopped. Where am I at? What's going on? And again, the youth in Japan have been a part of this movement for a long time. Look up, again, I dare you, look up Reggae Fest, Tokyo, Osaka. The youth not only fell in love with the culture, but many of them intermarried as well. And in a culture where being homogenous is a struggle, where it's been hard for kids who are multi-ethnic to feel that they belong, it was big to see this. Caste system-wise, using that language, kids who are white and Japanese or any level of European descendant and Japanese descendant, they tend to have a struggle, but they are at the top of the level compared to people who are Black, of African descent, and Japanese, even though both groups struggle. And so it was interesting going to Japan and learning firsthand about this, and then finding out, by the way, in this conversation, just within this genre of mixed or multi-ethnic ancestry and cultural ancestry, you also have people in the reggae Japanese culture who don't give a flip what you think, because they know who the people are and they understood the kinship of music. I was blown away seeing dance hall and people being celebrated. I was blown away seeing Black folks being celebrated in this store, and DJs who have a Japanese origin, they celebrate dance hall proudly as a way to denounce social evils. It wasn't hidden stuff. Now, some would say, are they appropriating? And that's also a problem to a point. Yes, there can be cultural appropriation, but when you assume someone is appropriating just because they don't look a certain way, that's a problem. I used to hate that kind of stuff growing up. But again, they're here. They're here. And let me show y'all some stuff from the conversation we had at one point. Just so y'all can see, in his words.
My name is Gabriel.
Do you want the light on?
Gabriel. So, you can talk. What's your story? Because I've been around this spot as far as the soccer and a little bit. I found out about this spot instead of picking up yourself. And I love the roster flow, the regular flow. How you get connected to all this thing? Jamaica.
When I go to Jamaica first time, it was over, maybe over 20 years ago. So I love reggae music.
Yeah.
And so I want to eat that Jamaica culture. That's why so Jamaica over 20 years ago. Stay last time maybe spend 3 months, right? Something. And moved to New York.
Sounds like a lot of connections with people there. No, very much.
Anywho, yeah. And that's not even the whole receipts, by the way, guys. That's one of the flags he has proudly in his house. For those who understand roots theology, roots Christianity, when it comes to Rega culture, when it comes to more specifically Rasta culture, there are the Rastas of two different branches. One of the branches are those similar to the Lutherans. Those are the ones that I also saw growing up, visiting family and kin in Jamaica. They were the Rastas who were some of the Lutherans that said, we don't worship Martin Luther, but we do believe that Martin Luther's walk and how he lived was very much how we want to live because it reflects our understanding of Christ. Likewise, they also have Rastas who say we don't worship Haile Selassie or Rastafari, but we do worship what he worshipped, which is Christ. But the way that he lived is a reflection of how Jesus would live. So when I saw that flag, I thought, y'all got job? What? Okay. I'm not going to question it too much. I'm just going to wonder what do people want to say when they come back to America with the receipts? And so, yeah, it's really important for people to understand the importance of seeing how your culture can split and be transformed over several generations. These are more photos, by the way. You can see the dance hall photo in the background. Kingston Lounge, Natto Suite. You can see all that. Corner Shop Chop. Once again, Sunday dish, weekly lunchbox. And they have jerk chicken with rice, jerk pork, fried chicken, brown stew chicken, fish, estovich fish, and steamed fish. You see that, rice and peas also. That was normal.
Gabriel, I haven't had dinner yet. You're not helping, young blood.
I'm sorry.
You're making my stomach tell my spine to move over, so cut it out, man.
My bad. Again, I had to give you all the receipts.
So take that grin off your face, man. Come on.
By the way, this right here, y'all will appreciate this. This is a friend of mine, Hosea Baker. Hosea is actually one of the teachers I knew who came from Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. He has been in Japan for over 21 plus years. So his kids are of African ancestry, and it turned out that there was a potential link between us. We talked about what happened with the various slave trades and some who also fought back. And he has lived in Japan proudly for several years with his family. They have something called Foods of the African Diaspora, where you work with one of the friends I met there. She is Haitian, and they actually did food exchanges where they help people to understand the power of culture through food. And so she cooked Haitian food, my friend Bernice, she cooked Haitian food, also Japanese food, and they mixed them together and shared what the experience was like. So it's just so powerful being there. That's my friend Jose and his family, by the way. It's so powerful being there for this moment, you know, see the different dishes, some of them African dishes like sombi and smothered pork and hopanjan and so forth, trini kuku and so forth. All that was done in order to show the power of exchanging cultures. And the fact that you have freedom to do it. I don't have time for people trying to erase my identity. I also don't have time for gatekeepers trying to tell me just how far I can go when I give me my full self. And I need my ancestors, my creator, God needs me to be my full self because there's so much more we can offer and we have the right to grow and share more of who we are. So again, I just want to show you guys that.
I love that picture of the little girl hiding in the background.
Yeah, that's his daughter. That's his daughter. Yeah, she's precious. She's precious. But yeah, we had a fun time. I mean, it was pretty fun. And that's my other friend, by the way. I've known since high school. His wife is also Japanese. Now he is of German ancestry. He also has some, as per 23andMe, he has some roots in Iraq. And so yeah, it was pretty cool. And that's my friend Bernice, who is Haitian. She's teaching there. She's been teaching in Japan for several years. And again, she was really insistent on people knowing the importance of sharing Haitian ancestry. So it was really cool to be there for that and to be a part of that experience. That's the dish, by the way, where they have foods from around the world. I was spoiled. I loved it. Had a grand time seeing all this amazing food, and it was just really awesome. By the way, see the book I was reading? The Creole Archipelago talked about what life was like in colonial Caribbean when different groups of people came together and they had to fight for identity across the islands because we kept mixing so much that the powers that be couldn't control us, and they didn't want us to mix nations and tribes, just like in Japan, where people are now having that same conversation. That's a good book if anyone wants to check it out. So before going further, I would love to open it up for conversations and see what you guys are thinking so far, because I have talked enough, quite frankly, and I want to make sure that I hear your thoughts before we roll on to some other photos. What are you guys thinking right now? What are your thoughts about what I'm talking about?
I don't know where to begin, to be quite honest. I mean, goodness, I throughout my life, and even certainly even up to today, I interact with many people of Japanese ancestry and many different, many different kind of relationships. So it's interesting, to hear your firsthand experiences traveling there. I think I mentioned before, one of the funkiest bands I know right now coming out of Japan is Tokyo Groove Ayoshi, but also one of the baddest salsa bands I ever heard came out of Japan. They're known as Orquesta de la Luz. Some of you in some of our prior forums may have heard me speak about the quilombos of South America. Well, it is a funky, slow jazz funk song that was done by Sadao Watanabe called Quilombo. You want to hear some good, slow, funky jazz funk? Check that out. So again, one planet under a groove. And again, we're all related, and to see these things, I'm also thinking about, oh goodness, you mentioned Haitian and Japanese. I'm thinking, of course, the tennis great Naomi Osaka. And I don't remember her name offhand, but a few years ago, Miss Japan was of Black and Japanese ancestry.
Yep.
Although she went through some of the similar problems that our sister, our Navajo sister, Ritmila Cody went through when she became Miss Navajo back in the 1990s, because there were some Japanese folks that had problems with that. But again, these interactions go on, and it's interesting to see how history and the evolution of humanity just continues to evolve in all sorts of ways.
Yeah. Liz, while you were talking, I was scrolling through. I was listening at the same time I was reading the book, and it reminded me of some of the conversations with cultures evolving and how cultural evolution was a part of our survival, part of one of our strategies for survival. The Kalinago, the indigenous people of Barbados as well as Dominica, they had an underground railroad that took people across the islands, and when people of African descent were brought there, including from Sierra Leone, they end up intermerging with the people, and some would take them and make them honorary members of the tribes or smuggle them out. Others, if they could escape the plantations, they would jump over with the tribes and they would island hop. The same thing happened as it concerns the Underground Railroad, the Saltwater Railroad with the Seminoles and others, and some going as far as Cuba. We know that, but we don't really know how this whole concept of hopping and then finding refuge and then updating identity is a part of our survival story. And the same thing happened in Japan and has been happening. I've been talking just about what happened in the Japanese context of living on the island. I haven't talked about what happened for those who came from Japan to our parts of North America. Los Angeles was founded in large part by people of Far East Asian ancestry and African Americans. And I was told when I went to the Museum of the Japanese American, which I'll show you next, the largest group of people to intermarry East Asians are African Americans, Japanese and African Americans to be specific. I see Miss Gaines' hand. I see your hand raised. What's going on? If you can unmute, can I hear you? Are you there? I see your hand raised. Ms. Ann, you there?
You're muted.
She muted? Hold up real quick. There we go. Yeah, I see your hand. I want to skip over her. I can hear barely. Can you speak a little bit?
She's really low. Yeah.
Really low. She may come back. I know that she might have to log back in and stuff. But yeah, to your point, while I'm waiting for her to come back, yeah, I mean, it's really important for us to understand this conversation as it concerns island hopping. I was reading this book at the same time, by the way, because again, part of travel journalism is reading books on the way. And so I was reading this book about the Kalinago and how the Eastern Caribbean started and what happened when the indigenous inhabitants of Dominica dealt with religions being brought over, Christianity being one of them, and also to deal with cultural shifting amongst their own people. And it was so wild seeing this in real time to realize this is not an old story, it's a new current story. So yeah, it's just really, really cool to be here for this and just, again, to be familiar with this. And I remember someone telling me about that before I took my trip. They said, we need to have the conversation about the Gullahs. We need to have a conversation about the Black Seminoles. But one conversation that's not happening right now that you should lean into is what happened for those of Caribbean ancestry, because you don't just have Gullah Black Seminole ancestry. You also have ancestors from Barbados. You also have ancestors from the islands, and they have a story too that should be tapped into.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. We hear you loud and clear.
All right. Sorry about that. I had a little bit of technical difficulty. I just wanted to chime in as an educator myself and remind everyone that in this day and time, it is even more imperative that we continue to put forth an effort to share our stories publicly, because there is such a great effort to erase our history that we're going to have to take it upon ourselves even more so to share our stories.
Yeah.
I wear something daily that says Black Seminole, or, I may have a bracelet on or a hat or a shirt or something. And I use that to engage and educate people. So yeah, we're definitely going to have to step the game up a little bit more. That's all I had to say. And thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. No, I'm glad you gave that encouragement. As I was here in some of these other spaces, I was thinking about that actually abroad. And I'll be honest, even before this current administration shift, you can kind of feel the storm coming before everything shifted in January.
Yes.
Which is really confirmed for it. And to see people say, oh, stuff will never happen. And then suddenly seeing people say they're shocked at the African American Museum.
Right.
Right. Was celebrated apparently in 2017 is now race divided. It made me think, yeah, this is not a game.
It's not.
It's not a game. They're threatened by people knowing who they are and by us communicating right now.
Right. And interestingly enough, I had just been researching the African presence in the Far East. So this is right on time. So.
Oh, stellar. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
By the way.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to, the climate we're in right now, though, it's just, we've come full circle again because we've been through this before. The fact that we've had to have these forums over the years to try to correct all the nonsense that's preceded us. Well, that faction has gotten in power again, and they're coming back full force. But we've gone through this before. Certainly our ancestors have gone this before. And like you said before, we're the answers to the prayers of some of our ancestors. So yeah, we've got that torch right now, and we got to carry it and make sure it stays lit.
Right.
And I'll get off my soapbox for now.
By the way, something I want to add to what y'all both saying. One of the reasons I do travel journalism and movement journalism is because part of our resistance is not just denouncing the evils in the system. Part of our resistance is actually celebrating the beauty in us and our stories. I find it draining personally when people constantly focus on what evils are happening. We should speak, let me be clear, we should document, we should definitely speak out, speak truth to power. But I find it draining when that's all people do, without realizing you need also space to rest. And with that, I don't mean rest after not doing nothing. I mean, we need space to dream together and space for our researchers, our documentarians to actually showcase stuff. If they were assaulting the history with what happened to the Seminoles, of course, I'm going to stand up and speak about that. But I'm also going to speak about what happened when many of our Seminole kin and ancestors went out to also establish new landing posts, new spaces for development so that people can know we are ongoing. We are moving peoples. And they want to blitzkrieg us as well, so that we feel so overwhelmed that we forget the roots that we have and where we come from. We forget that even during enslavement, people were traveling not just within North America, but they were traveling outside of the nation as well. There were people who did go with the Back to Africa movement that I believe was associated with Martin Delaney and a couple of others, but there were also others that said, no, we're going to fight for our citizenship here in the US, but we're also going to celebrate our missionaries who went around the world. Speaking of which, let me do something. I've got to go, but I have to do it. We're right now talking about the Underground Railroad, and I'm going to come back to what I just mentioned before. But did you guys know with the Underground Railroad, it's a fun little fact for you, we didn't know already. With the Underground Railroad, did you guys know that it also went all the way to the Pacific? I just went to Maui for the first time to celebrate, and I didn't post this recently, but I was stunned to find out the Underground Railroad itself, there are people who made it all the way out to Maui by boat. There were missionaries who were going there and businessmen, and others jumped on those boats. Whaling boats were also another way for people to get freedom. Some were connected with people who were mariners, and African Americans were also known to be sea people as well. And they jumped in those boats and they went all the way out to the Pacific. So we have people who may have come from a certain tribe in Africa and had an intermingle in North America, but then they split up and had a whole different branch that went to the Pacific. And many in that part of the world still feel that people don't acknowledge their own existence because they don't fit in with mainland North American narratives. So imagine being someone of Gullah or Black Seminole ancestry, living in Maui and seeing people say, well, there's no one like us over there. They're thinking, have you not considered that we also grew in this part of the world too? The first person to establish a school for the common people, her name was Betsy Stockton. Betsy Stockton. Stockton. She actually wasn't a formerly enslaved woman. She found freedom with the missionaries who went over there. And while stuff was happening, the Civil War and the Underground Railroad here, she was existing in a whole different part of the world. She taught English, and she educated, and she stood on behalf of the rights of the First Nations or the tribal people there in the Pacific. You don't hear those narratives that are common, and they're quite common, just like the narratives for people of African descent in Japan and other spaces are common, but they're hidden in many places as well. That's another
Gabriel,
guy.
I think I told you, I spent 10 days on Maui back in 1994.
Yeah.
And all the Native Hawaiians I met, okay, there's certain cultural distinctions, but they were home folks.
Yeah.
They're straight up home folks.
Straight up. I mean, I saw a lot of people.
Also, I'm sorry, but I also, during World War II, there was actually a Black battalion that was responsible for the security of the island. And that further reinforced those old ties that I guess even go back to the times that you mentioned. So yeah, like I said, they were home folks to me now.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's real. I mean, honestly, Maui hit me more than I realized it was going to hit me. I'm just telling you that now. Being there and finding out that there were people, let me go back to this one picture right here. Finding out that there were people of African ancestry and others who also were advised to the royal family. T.M. Kent Stewart, he was a Black attorney who was in the cabinet of King Kalakua. There was another guy who was an advisor to King Kamehameha. And it was just amazing to just see this rich history that I did not get told growing up. And it's frustrating. If you look up Black presence in Hawaii with the National Park Services, I would encourage you all to do so as soon as you can, because you know how they've been removing history steadily, bit by bit. I went on at one point and they removed the brochure that was available to talk about the Underground Railroad, but I found a website that actually downloaded the documents, the physical brochures. So let me make it more plain for those who may be listening into it. I did not just go to Maui to take a vacation during spring break. I went to get the receipts so that my students and others in the future could see firsthand. By the way, if you went on the website and you didn't see anything there, you would have never known what was actually there in person. And this is why we had these conversations as educators, because people, when they actively try to remove evidence, you gotta capture the photo where you can. The same thing makes me think about what happened to Seminole history. How many may have been of Seminole ancestry and Black Seminole ancestry and traveled the world and were pioneers, and someone didn't take a photo of it when they could, and now that history is erased. There are people who may know. There are people who do good with oral history, but you have to work even harder to get that history because people forgot in the moment to capture it and document it and put it out there. That's part of why I do what I do as a documentarian, and showing not just what African history is and African American history is on North American context, but to show what it's like globally, because they don't, powers that be, those who are dedicated to white supremacy and dedicated to the myths of Black inferiority, they don't want people to show who we are in how well traveled we've been. They don't want people to know about that. That, by the way, is at one of the major parks in Maui, where one of the major battles happened for the king, and where he actually helped to bring the tribes together, which is really, really crazy seeing this spot myself. And again,
I'm mentioning it's stunningly beautiful. And that coffee reminds me of like Cuban coffee. It will power the space shuttle.
Yeah. Real. You know there's chickens everywhere, by the way.
There are geckos everywhere. Geckos are like cockroaches over there, man. You can't. Geckos are every place, man.
I'll take a gecko to a cockroach anyway, any day.
Okay, maybe that was a bad analogy. My bad, man.
I walk through this incredible state park, this incredible gift of God, which is nature. Taking care of our green spaces. Now I'm on the beauty of wildlife. I've seen not just the birds and the leaves itself, but of course the
That's
beautiful
that yummy chicken, by the way, that dark skinned chicken.
This beautiful beauty right here. It looks like a
Their mouths are black also.
Hey, we got the affirmative action thing going on. We know that, man. Thank you, man.
Wild it is that African Americans, people of African descent, were also part of this conversation here in the islands. That said, here, in this particular marker, several African Americans of prominence fled here to Hawaii. They came along with the missionaries in 1820. And as again said here, the earliest settlers of African ancestry arrived in Hawaii well before missionaries in 1820 arrival. Until Hawaii became a territory in 1898, many of these Black immigrants were active in communities as advisors, entrepreneurs, and musicians. Blackjacker Mr. Kelekele was already living on Oahu when Kamehameha the first conquered the island in 796. He helped to build a storehouse for Queen Manu in Lahaina. Blackjack was the sailmaster for the king. He also served as an advisor and interpreter for the king. The whaling ships arrived in various parts of the island between 1820 and 1880. And all these ships are descendants of Black Portuguese men from the Cape Verde Islands. That'll be off this coast over here. Right here. Cape Verde Islands, right there. They were descendants of Black Portuguese men from the Cape Verde Islands off the coast of West Africa, Blacks in the Caribbean, and slaves and free Blacks in the Northeast United States. All these people, during the era of terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism via the KKK, lynchings, mob lynchings, and of course, Black codes. Black people finally would come from North America to Hawaii, travel all around the world. And it's fascinating. T. McCants Stewart right here was a Black attorney who was in the cabinet of the king, King Kalakaua. If I said it the right way, if I mispronounced it, I'm sorry. He helped them in drafting the Organic Act of the new territory of Hawaii. He also aided Hawaiians in regaining their lost properties. His daughter, Carlotta Stewart, graduated from Punahou School. She became a principal at Kalamalu School. William F. Crockett came to Hawaii in 1901 from Alabama and later became a judge of Hawaii.
Stuff you don't know. And again, because people are assaulting so much in our history, it's important for educators to be supported who go out and document this stuff so that it's in video format. This again is in one of the big spots in Maui that talk about the history of all the different groups, especially the Chinese who came over to work as laborers. Japanese come over as well. They are a huge part of the community. I was so thankful to be here for this history, to see it for myself and to see how multi-ethnic it was, and that it wasn't just about Chinese history, Filipino history, or Japanese history. It was also about the history of the people of the island, the different people who are of Polynesian ancestry, and those who mixed in from the African and Caribbean side. And that's also a part of us as well. They are also kin. And so I just want to make sure you guys can see some of that yourselves, so you can see more of the history around the world right in our backyard and why people are so upset. Let me throw this out there, by the way, because a lot of people are talking about birther identity right now. I remember when people kept claiming that Obama was not an American citizen. And it made me think, well, if you feel that people who are not on the mainland are not American enough, that's probably why you say that kind of foolishness. And the Obama Museum for the African American also has plenty of receipts for those of African ancestry who lived in Hawaii before it was annexed, taken over against the will of the kingdom and the royal family. So I want you guys to be aware of that, so you can see more of the beauty of what happened when people came together from so many backgrounds, including those who were from the original peoples of the island at the Battle of this particular valley, Iowa Valley, 1790. I want you guys to see that. I thought about this with different trees, how they had different types of trees, fern trees, alongside trees you would think are more in the tropics, and how they, no matter what background they were, chose to come together and link roots. Trees will link roots to different species of trees, no matter how distant they may be, because they have enough sense to know that they're stronger together, even with differences. How much more could we be stronger as a people by celebrating all of our varieties and their ongoing evolution? So there's some things right there. This is also, by the way, is a picture of one of the people I met in Hawaii, Lahaina. She worked with the people who are dealing with the aftermath of Lahaina the fires that happened 2 years ago that burnt down hundreds of years of history, longer than that. And she documented their experience in a book that I would recommend for everyone to check out, Big Hearts on a Little Island. Very, very amazing individual. I went to the library, by the way, like I told you guys, and I was amazed with some of the hard-hitting books that talk about some of the history that you don't see popularized. I just want to make sure I show you some of those books real quickly as I'm going through. Chinese Pioneer Families is a pretty expensive book, Chinese Pioneer Families of Maui. You also have, of course, the other one I'm trying to get to real quick, Ambassador in Arms, The Story of Hawaii is 100th Battalion. You also have another one called Japanese Eyes, American Heart, Yankee Samurai, Pathways of the Birds, The Voyaging Achievements of the Maori and Their Polynesian Ancestors. Brilliant book. It also talks about the history of those who were connected to the Melanesians, called Melanesians by the Europeans because they're melanin and how dark they were, and how many of them did say and have said they also have African ancestry as well. They're also kin. But again, that's just something I wanted to show you guys real quickly in the time that I did have. And again, there are plenty of other books. I got to come up for that one too. Libraries.
I want to digress just for a second.
What's up?
I want to digress this for a second again, Gabriel, because I think I shared this with you. Being originally from Florida when it was still very rural, when I was in Maui, one thing I couldn't get used to, there were no snakes. Everything about me, my old Florida country boy said, there should be snakes here. There were no snakes. Geckos every place. But anyway, I just had to share that. Sorry. Mute it.
Mm-hmm. Keep going. What were you saying? I was listening. We were listening.
Oh, I was just saying that, one thing I couldn't get used to when I was in Maui, reminding me when I was a boy in Florida, there were no snakes. Everything about Maui told me there should be snakes here, but there were no snakes any place. The geckos, yeah, but no snakes.
Oh, wow. That's a culture shift, man. I can't imagine being in a spot. Snakes are beautiful to me, but that's just me.
Well, yeah, the old man talking over here. Snakes were just a fact of life for me when I was a kid, man. Shit.
Yeah, it's all good. They're doing.
Some of us are shaking their head. I know all y'all sophisticated and stuff, but I'm just saying it's part of our heritage now.
Leave you alone. I respect how God gave them dominion in certain spots too. That snake will take care of a rat problem real quick if you had a rat infestation. But I'm sorry. But again, I just want to show you that. By the way, this book right here, just for educating purposes, this is a good book for kids to get, called Hamilton. It talks in detail about who he is as a founding father. It also talks about his life as a person of immigrant origins. That the reason he stood with Toussaint Louverture and the Haitian Revolution, because Toussaint understood Hamilton's understanding as a Caribbean islander of French ancestry and British ancestry, but an island man. He grew up seeing the slavery, the chattel slavery in the West Indies. And if you go to the Nevis and St. Kitts, you'll see more of how his home is still there, and his home has become a museum as well. So that's just something for you guys to see if you ever want to have a good book to reference. I would highly suggest going to libraries right now. One of the best ways you can resist dismantling of history is going to local libraries, supporting your local librarians, They are not the gatekeepers. They are the record keepers. And in many ways, we have disrespected the work of library. When the National Institute of Library Services and Museum Services was dismantled, many of the librarians had already been saying, you need to know that we're not just here reading books. This is a community space. The fact that someone who worked with the first responders in Lahaina was able to go by invite to the libraries and present all the ways the community came together and the ways that people on the island were able to keep their history, that's major. But that's under assault. And again, if you don't know where to look, you're not gonna know what's going on. So again, I'm showing you all the pictures of books that I saw when I was there. I've done this in many places I've been to. The first time I saw that one, by the way, with Commodore Perry and his discussions in the land of the Shogun, when he came over and there was a cultural exchange, even though in many respects, he forced open the nation after centuries of isolation. Again, I just want to make sure you guys can see some of these good books. That's a good book right there. Every Grain of Rice talks about Maui's Japanese community. Another powerful read that talks in depth about what happened when many of them as immigrants came over. and they worked, like I told you, on the pineapple plantations and other plantations across the island. Mark Twain was on record speaking about how he saw the Japanese experience in many ways similar to the African experience as well. And y'all can see that picture quite clearly. This man dressed in hat gloves is harvesting pineapple in 1940. There was a lot of abuse that happened for people in the plantations across not just Hawaii, but also in the Southeast. In Mississippi, there were Japanese and Chinese laborers who actually came to the Delta. And by the way, the movie Sinners, which is actually a pretty good movie, by the way, it actually shows people of Asian ancestry. I forget which, I think Chinese in particular. Some people were shocked by that movie, and I gotta say, it's not for the faint of heart, but that movie has so many layers to it. The fact they also showed Chinese in the Delta was major because many don't recognize that people from that part of the world, as well as Filipinos, the Manila Men, as a cultural reference, the Manila Men who worked with Andrew Jackson in the War of 1812. The fact that the movie showed that was critical, so people could see visually what it would have been like for people of African ancestry to interact with many cultures in one cultural context in the South. When I think about Indian country, and not just the Seminoles, but other tribes, Choctaw, when I think about the Choctaw, when I think about the Creek, when I think about the Muskogee, when I think about the Cherokee and so forth, and how even with their different expressions of culture, welcoming different groups, I think that's a conversation we have to have more. Because it's not just enough to say, let's make sure we stand for Seminole culture. You have to actually talk about the varieties of that and how it looks and what it can look like when it gets transplanted in another part of the world, like a potted plant, taking all the characteristics of the soil that it lands in. I just want to show you guys that again. And I hope I'm not going too fast for you guys. I just wanted to show you some of the pictures I saw when I saw things up close and personal and realized there's power in telling your story. Even if it's obscure to some people, there's a power in telling your individual, your unique story. By the way, a little fun thing for you guys. I heard a preacher say something really stupid recently. He said something as dumb as the following: the devil was black. I believe the devil was a black man. He talked to a bunch of black Christians in the audience and people cheered on. I sat there and thought that's so stupid, but at the same time, when the Bible describes angels having bronze skin tones, bronze also has my complexion and dark. So this picture right here spoke to me when I was in a spot that, if I show the picture real quick, this spot right here in Maui is called, it's one of the largest state parks they have there. It's the Black Volcanic Sand State Park, just in simple form. You look up, it's Hawaii's Black Volcanic Sand Park. The technical term will come up. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm not going to try it because I don't want to butcher the term. But man.
Gabriel, I find myself, as I gotten older, I repeat a phrase some of the elders used to say when I was a boy in Florida: without fools, there'd be no wisdom.
No wisdom, yeah. Without fools, there'd be no wisdom. Yes, sir. Let me show you this, by the way. This is the actual sand, the beach, just for y'all to have a fun photo. Jet black sand.
Wow.
And I love walking on that sand as I was reading this book on the history of the Pacific Islands, being there and thinking, how wild is it that people still think that darker complexion is bad? With that movie Sinners, what I found fascinating, and thank you, Anne, for putting that in with the Choctaws. I love how they had Choctaws there proudly as well. Choctaws warned them. I ain't gonna say more, I don't want to spoil the movie. The Choctaws warned them. Yes, they did. But the fact that the main character was not just an African-American woman, but a dark-skinned woman as the person who warned them how to survive and had all the secrets, I thought it was brilliant, because you live in a world that is still fearful of how people in the early world used to look. So when I was at this beach, I was walking around thinking about my ancestors, thinking about Creator, thinking about the things God's done in my life, and I just sat on the beach thinking about the fact that even nature itself shows that my skin tone is beautiful. Even nature itself shows that darker skin tones are beautiful. And I just had a fun time just walking on the beach and just thinking about the gift of being able to travel abroad and represent for the cultures I come from proudly and interact with people. That is my First Nations Virgin Bible that talks about the story of Luke. And as I sat there and read about the encounter of the angel Gabriel and Mary, it dawned on me, for all the people that are trying to demonize Black folks and say the devil is Black, it made me think, well, if angels can't be Black, then what would that be like for Mary to see a dark-skinned Black person saying good news to you? I already see angels in the Bible that have descriptions with that, such as saying their skin tone was bronze. So it doesn't shock me that, angels can have certain complexion. Even in ancient iconography in Egyptian cultures, for example, you have darker skin hues for certain beings. So again, as I read my Bible and thought, what would that look like back in the day? And why does it matter now? It matters because we have to start visualizing ourselves in the world and celebrating how we look. And I walked through the sand, and there's a story called Footprints in the Sand where God was carrying somebody and the person said, I saw 2 footprints and I saw one. Where was the other one from? And God said, the 2 footprints where we walked together, and when you got tired, there was the one pair of footprints were when I carried you. I thought that's something that spoke to me even now, that we've been carried through history by our Creator, even when we couldn't carry ourselves. And so again, I just want to show you guys that little thing. And again, it was so different being in this part of the world and seeing the beauty, sheer beauty of being here and knowing who you are culturally, knowing who you are when it comes to the histories and the religions that shape you. It was a really big deal to be here in this spot in volcanic sand and to see this. This is something we do for fun. We should do for fun more, just to enjoy seeing the world. Seeing the world is how we get to have our spirits lifted up, to have a vision that's bigger than where we came from. So I just want to share that with you guys.
There's a local activist, and he's been active for many decades here in the city, and he's gone in all different strata in society. But anyway, it's Felipe Luciano. He's one of the founders of the Young Lords, by the way. But he says something that I often repeat at my performances. Remember that our joy is our greatest treasure and our greatest weapon.
Yeah, it really is. Our joy and our stories, our joy, but joy first is our greatest weapon. And we should take joy in one another. We should take joy in celebrating the roots of who we are and how we've created new varieties all the time. We should take joy in that, because at many points of history, we have not been allowed to take joy at all. We simply have not been. And that's by design. That's by design. By the way, this has nothing to do with history, but this cat, in the islands, there are island cats all over this place. And what I find fascinating is that every place I go to, I see island cats. This cat was just sitting there, and the lady who was in this picture right here, she saw this cat, was taking photos of it. I sat there and thought about this cat and thought, God gave you your colors. God gave you a beautiful brown and black pattern. He made you paint it. I sat there and I was just talking to the cat and saying, thank you for posing for me.
I'm going to speak musician for a second. Them cats are chilling.
They're chilling. They're like, we don't care what you humans think. And as it is, you don't own the world. You'll find out soon enough as it is. But the cat was just sitting there, and I thought, this cat did not ask to be here, but they belong here anyhow. And this cat knows the variety or variation of complexion that Creator gave it. So the cat knows who it is, who she or he is. I think it's a girl, by the way. The cat knows who she. I'm listening. The cat knows who she is, and it made me think how many people would benefit from knowing uniquely who they are. I've been to some of the family gatherings before when it comes to let me just be candid. In some spaces that celebrate Gullah culture, I've been thankful to go there. But man, there have been times where I got drained going. I got drained going because, again, I am a multi-ethnic indigenous person, right? I like to celebrate all my roots and the roots of other people, but my goodness, it got tiring when people said, you don't know who you are because you don't claim us only. I sat there and thought, that's how colonizers think. Because only one person, only one part of me has to exist, and that tells me you have an agenda anyhow. Because our ancestors did not do that. They did not try to force us to be one or the other. They also adopted people in the clans and the tribes, which is how the culture developed. But somewhere along the way with blood quantum in particular, we made it just about blood type. Just that. And that's not the conversation I think we should really be having. I'm making some pushback from that from other people in other spaces. That's fine. But, it is what it is. By the way, stereotype, when people say, what kind of Hawaiian food do you have? I went to the local shop and they gave me fish and chips. It's like when people say, well, what do you like about being Afro-Native? And I start reading comic books and they think, well, wait, why are you reading comics? I want to see something more exotic. What's your culture? What about your dances? It made me think you don't have to always perform in order to be fully who you are. I read books because it's also part of who I am. But if you really want to have an African tradition, the griots, the storytellers, the people who were documentarians, the librarians in Timbuktu, in Mali, yeah, I carry that also, but I have the right to express how I want to express while also being aware of where I come from. When people say, for example, you need to know your language, I think that's a big deal. When other people then say you're not really tribal enough because you don't know a language, that's only one variety of how people are. There are multiple other traditions. When people say where African Americans don't have a true culture, and then they focus on certain expressions of Afro-Native heritage, like tribal dancing, they ignore the fact that there were several different varieties of ancestral knowledge. What about the food recipes that we have? What about the ways that we celebrate ancestral storytelling? What about the ways that we celebrate, as I was told, traveling? Because some of our ancestors did travel quite a bit. And that's something that was major. And let me go ahead and stop and share something real quick before I show you some other things.
I'm going to be shameless and self-serving again, Gabriel. When it comes to food, if I start drooling on the screen here, man, it's your fault.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, you're not. You're grinning so hard right now, man. Don't even try it.
No, I apologize. I mean, I like food too. I ain't gonna lie. I like my food. By the way, I want to show you something of my grandmother real quick. I didn't share some things earlier, but I want to take some quick time to talk about. Hold up real quick. Hold up real quick. What do you guys think right now about everything that's coming up real quick? I know I've gone pretty fast, but I thank you guys for your patience in everything that's been said. And I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts before I share something else real quick. This right here, what you're about to see, you guys see my screen? Oh boy, hold up. You can't see my screen, can you?
Let me live.
What's up?
Yes.
There's a book on the screen.
Okay, I took it off. My computer's acting out. Give me one quick second. I gotta do something. Woo, my computer was tripping on me. Okay. Now I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna go to share screen. Don't mess up now. Okay. I want to show you some things that motivated me as it concerns my ancestry. This, by the way, is my late great-grandmother, Polly D. Jones. I didn't grow up with her, but she was there when I was born. And my mother and my father, they were both amazing people. As happens many times, they, went astray and lost sight of who they were. And so it took me a while to reconnect in different places of life. But God took care of me the entire time. And I make no apologies to people who want to hear my testimony about how I survived. That's my grandmother right there in the middle. That's my biological father, who I got to reconnect with when I was 21 years old. That was my brother, my second youngest brother, Andre, my brother after me, George, my youngest brother, Trey, one of my cousins, and my uncles, Tim and Tom. That's us at my grandmother's birth celebration and Christmas. We got all of them together for the first time. I wanted to show some things with genealogy real quick. This is a bit of a switch, so you can see how this motivates. My grandmother and I were talking about the importance of ancestry. When I got to reconnect with her 2 years before she passed, 2 years ago, she helped me to go through all of our family history. I interviewed her several times, and it wasn't necessarily planned. She would just sometimes start sharing something out of nowhere. I got my phone out and said, record, and just let her talk. That's how it goes. It's something I catch in the moment. And we were talking about the importance of genealogy. She knew her entire family tree for 7 generations. This Bible is the family Bible that she had, that she and my late grandfather had. Our ancestry, as she found out, went all the way back to 1869. And it was just so powerful to be there with her sharing that history with me, and to talk about how people hid their history in the Bibles as well when the slave auctions took place. And again, just to be clear, she shared the history for us on both sides of the family, both sides, her mother and her father's. And it was so powerful to get that. I want to play a little video so you can see us talking. Where she actually memorized her whole family tree history.
Eliza.
And we had to literally sit there when we couldn't find the records.
Floyd.
We were going to try to track people down. Me and my uncle sat down.
All right.
During Juneteenth.
There was
Man. Otis. His name is Otis.
She's the one with black foot on Gullah.
These are all Hendersons.
Yeah.
That's the mom who, not your mom.
Florence Henderson, that's the father,
The father.
was Henderson.
Well, the mother was Evelina Hayes.
Right.
Then,
Well,
We sat there for about a good
Floyd.
hour and a half. And from memory, she wrote down the names
Okay.
of every single auntie and uncle that she had.
Hold on, let's see, Isaiah,
the brothers and
Florence,
sisters
Maliza,
of her
Floyd,
parents' parents as
Man,
well.
which is also named Otis.
So we wanted to make sure we got all those names
4,
down before
5,
she
6.
passed, and it was such a blessing. And at one point,
Those
she
areas.
said she had her family record in the Bible, and I said, "There's no way."
Called the Piedmont area.
As we went through it,
your father's was a sheriff.
You said he was a Mason too.
Yeah, but
Was he?
forget about Robert Whitaker.
Okay, so you're saying the Hayes,
that's my mother.
you're saying
Her
Johnny
mother's last
Jones
name
was
was
a
Hayes.
Mason. Okay.
Her mother's first name was Elijah.
Okay. You're
This is
saying
the part where we
Robert
actually had a
Henderson.
lot of records down. Here's the part where we actually got
Okay.
we went through all that. She kept saying, "I know this here in the Bible somewhere."
Yeah.
I knew it.
And I kept saying, "Grandma, there's no way that could be in the Bible. You just got to do the best."
Y'all know people in Florida, right? Family members went to Florida.
Not right off the bat.
But Mississippi, y'all definitely know Mississippi. I know
Yeah.
Seminoles came from Florida to Mississippi after coming on board.
Some Mississippi, yep.
Yeah.
Brian and them could.
From Florida all the way to Mississippi. What's that?
That's why Mississippi.
What is that? That's what it is. I knew it. I knew
She
it.
had
I
it.
knew it.
They're the Bible, the whole genealogy.
Praise God. This is why you know your elders aren't
If
crazy.
she
I was
passed,
in the
we
Bible
lost
earlier. I
that.
kept
We
thinking
lost that history.
every
that
time I
we
went
lost.
through it, there was nothing there. There was praise the Lord of God.
What is that right there? That's it.
Family records. Thank you, Grandma. Woo! Yeah.
Who they got there?
Plenty of people. You have George Whitaker. There's a family record of George Whitaker. Polly Ann Whitaker, George C. Jones, were United Holy
We
Matrimony.
recorded the whole history before he passed. My grandfather passed.
I got that. Nope.
Her mother's
There
history.
it is. Grandma, I knew you weren't crazy. We all
And
know you
her-
weren't crazy, but we have it all here now. Okay. And I'm recording this, so I have this to send to you. The whole family have it all down.
Right. 1896. I did pretty good math.
We did all that again to show you guys some stuff because, again, I'm saying that part of genealogy, the work of genealogy, is knowing that we can all do that work and that our work is sacred work when we document our stories and interview in the ways we can. The fact is that my grandmother at one point swore that she had our whole family tree on her husband's side, her late husband's side, and her side down. I swear, I don't see any of the Bibles we have here. And I was fearful that once she passed, that record would be lost. So that's why I recorded for about 20 minutes or so, actually about 50 minutes or so on my phone. There was space taken up, but I sat there and recorded as we did oral history and recorded. And suddenly I found the records in the Bible, which is a historical point because when families were auctioned off into slavery, they would often hide their full history in their Bibles, in their family Bibles, so that when they got free, they can go hunt down the family members and say them by name. And they knew that people would not look in the Bibles. So as it concerns some hidden traditions from the church or churches, that was something that I was glad to learn from my grandmother, who was born and raised, born in Mississippi, actually born in Missouri, but her father was from Mississippi, and so her mother's from Mississippi. It was just wild to hear that growing up and to see her roots. And by the way, this is a photo of my grandmother's ancestry that we found out about before I went to the Far East and to Polynesia. When her 23andMe results came back, as well as my Ancestry.com, it noted the Filipino roots that she had, 0.3 ancestry in Melanesia. I went there to those spaces and I met people who were from Papua New Guinea, and they said, "You are Papuan, you got some of us in you." And I said, I don't want to claim, I don't doubt it. They also said, "We have African in us too, but I don't think that people will mistake you if you came to Papua New Guinea. They would not think of you as Caribbean. Not saying that's bad, but you would fit in. You got something of us inside of you." And when I got back from my trip to Australia, traveling to the Pacific, the results came in, and this is what we found out. And that's before I found out more about the Filipinos who went to Mississippi and traveled up the Delta and across Louisiana all the way to Missouri. That's before I found out about what happened in regards to more of the intermerging with Seminole, Black Seminole, and the African people. So I say all that because everything that my grandmother told me orally was verified in time. And I just pursued the journey, taking her story with me. And of course, I am thankful for everything that she shared, the photo documentation, such as this guy right here, my late great grandfather, John D. Jones, her father, who was a Baptist minister, went blind but memorized the entire Bible. That's him right there at the church he was a part of, Webster Grove. This is also the DNA result that I have to show you more of my roots coming from the Lesser Antilles and, of course, the Carolinas. There are people who would say you're not really Seminole or Black Seminole or Gullah if you didn't have roots specifically in the Sea Islands, but I personally believe that. I believe that we also have people that spread from that part of the world to other places, and therefore you have to have that conversation of how cultures look. And again, it's always important for me to tell people we should know about our cultural heritage as it concerns Seminole history and so forth. We also got to recognize that our history has also had several different trajectories and so forth.
Gabriel, it's interesting you mentioned that about Papua. Years ago, I went to an art exhibit here in New York City of Papua art, and it looked Yoruba. I mean, it really looked Yoruba, and it blew my mind, man.
Wow. Do you have a photo of that? I would love to see a photo of that. I would love to see that at some point.
Oh, I'm talking now, this is in the 20th century, that exhibit was, but I'm sure you can see parallels now if you look at any, well, yeah, check out some Yoruba art and carvings in particular in paintings, then check out some of the art and carvings from Papua New Guinea, man. We're all related.
Yeah. We truly are. We truly are. And I think that's why these conversations always bring me life, because when we start to share the root systems that we all come from, it helps to remind us how we're related. When we shared at the Association for African, AAAM, Association for African American Museums, and Smithsonian back in, was it 2022 in Florida? We talked about that, how we need to know our relations. And many in African American experience alone, we are not as familiar. Some of that is conditioning. And that's why it's important for us to continue having conversations regardless. One of our mentors, Dr. Ariberto Dixon, he spoke about that when he said we come from different tribes that all flow into one river. He spoke about the Mississippi River in particular, how the Mississippi River has multiple tributaries where they flow out.
I want to interject for a second because, you know, you and I both deeply respect Ari. You may or may not know this. He recently lost his wife.
Okay.
So if you have a chance, let's touch base with them. I mean, it was like 2 months ago, but still, they were together a very long time. And, you know, and Ari's one of our greatest treasures, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll definitely that. I'll make sure. Thank you for letting me know about that. I'm gonna hit him up as soon as I can, ASAP. And for those who don't know, please look up Dr. Ariberto. He again talked about how we all come from many different backgrounds. A river has many tributaries. It has many different streams that come together in major spaces, but we come together from many people in the same way. He spoke about that being proud of his Saponi roots as a member of the Saponi Nation of Ohio, but he also spoke about that when he encouraged me in regards to the work of the late, great Dr. William Katz, who was also a distant mentor of mine. He encouraged me to say, you need to talk about who you are. You need to make sure that you get your stories out there. You need to make sure that at some point you make a book or a website to get more young adults aware of the need to know their stories and share. And he's spoken to my life to remind me that your elders, while you should celebrate your elders, you should celebrate how your elders are speaking into your life as you become an elder as well. And again, that's why he really meant a lot to me. You can see some of the stuff that he said flowing through everything I've talked about today, with different places around the world that I've taken you to. And I thank him for that investment. I thank him for reminding me to share these stories. For example, this is my grandfather, my late grandfather, Alfonso Greaves, who was born and raised in Panama and whose ancestry comes from Barbados and Nigeria. He went to Penn State. He was quite brilliant. He was a principal and educator. So when I do education and people say, you're really brilliant, how do you know so much stuff? I tend to think this is also part of my spiritual blessing. It's in my DNA. The blessing got passed down. But you know, those things are a really big deal for me to keep in mind when it comes to knowing the importance of the family heritage that we come from. It's important for me to take these stories with me, to remember that one who pays, like this quote, one who pays respect to the great pays away for his own greatness. Gray hair is a crown of the old. It's a crown of glory. It's gained by a righteous life. It's really important for people to know about the history of my ancestors, such as my great-grandfather who passed away, the one who was born in Barbados, who also has Scots-Irish roots. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I just want to show you guys this real briefly so you know more about some of the root systems I come from. When it comes to my great-grandfather also having Irish ancestry, Scots-Irish ancestry, and Bayesian, being Bayesian and proud of it, being proud of the Irish folks who joined together with those of African ancestry in the islands to resist systems together. He married my late great-grandmother, as I'll show you a picture of in a bit. He married my late great-grandmother when they both lived in Panama, when people came from around the world to live in the Canal Zone, came from Barbados and Trinidad. That's him in his youth, my great-grandfather, Willie King, when he was the supervisor dispatcher on the Panama Canal. He married my late great-grandmother right there, Isabel Gerardelle King. She was born in Panama in Gatun, but her father was Jamaican, and as we found out, Haitian as well. She also reminded me about my Cromanti roots, the roots of the slave rebels that came from the Gold Coast in Ghana and were rebels, and how that ancestry was a part of my legacy. They also joined forces with the Arawak and in many cases the Kalinago. And they also had no problem with different cultures merging together. So again, when you see more about why my passions are the way they are, I hope it makes sense. I carry not just that Coromantee root, but I also carry the roots of my ancestors, to my great-grandfather, the Bajans who were Scots-Irish, the Redlegs who came together to join with them to create a new people and to be proud of that. That's on top of the Gullah ancestry that I have that I just shared with you guys. And I carry all of that with me, going all around the world, seeing different types of African communities in the Americas that make up our family tree, and recognizing that I had the right to exist. I had the right to exist. This is after this following my grandmother's ancestry. We just found this out when it came to finding out that my great-grandmother, before she passed, actually did have Haitian ancestry in part. I was shocked. I did my 23andMe at first, and it said you have roots to Cuba as well as Haiti. And I thought, wait, that I know about my Jamaican Cromanti roots, but then my grandmother got tested, and it verified, since she is the living ancestor of my late great-grandmother, it verified to my grandmother that my great-grandmother's mother, who she never knew, was Haitian. And as we talk, I said, Grandma, wait, the DNA don't lie. What's up with this? I didn't know that Grandma Tiny had Haitian ancestry. And she said, you know what? Now that I think about it, she did speak Patois and Spanish. I'm just now finding out about this. My response. She mentioned how they were very secretive with what they did in sharing language, because there was such a hate toward people of Haitian ancestry, even though Haiti helped to liberate people around the world. So many in private conversation with ladies and who could understand would start to speak Patois as well as Spanish on the Canal Zone. So sometimes it's important to understand why people don't emphasize certain parts of their identity when identities merge. And again, I say all that to help people understand that having multi-ethnic ancestry is not simplistic. Sometimes you don't share fully about your ancestors if you feel that there is no space for it, as my great-grandmother, my understanding, probably did, by not emphasizing when she spoke Patois and not really speaking. I saw the traditions in our family. I saw some of the things she did that did make sense to me over time when I realized who she was. That's me, by the way, when I was middle school, my late great-grandfather, my beautiful late great-grandmother, Tiny, my grandmother, and my mother. All one family, 7 generations. Proud of who we are, thankful for our roots, and thankful for, the gift of sharing who we are in our ancestry. And again, I want you guys to be a part of sharing in that so you can see what I carry and why it's important for us to know what we carry. I could say more, but I feel that I have said everything that I probably should say. So I want to hear what you guys think before wrapping up, or, anything that you guys like to hear further from me about.
Well, in the language of the ancestors, man, Chinky Shonabesh Mado, man. Like I said, this is long overdue, man, and we really appreciate you sharing tonight, bro.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Everybody's smiling, all your beautiful faces. Gabriel, is it all right if anyone wants to contact you after to share your email address?
Yes, that'd be totally fine with me.
Okay. Do you want to put it in the chat? I don't know it offhand.
My email address is ggraves10 at comcast.net.
You went out for what? 1 second. Graves.
ggraves103.
Okay.
At comcast.net.
Okay.
And G Graves 103.
Did I do that right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yep, that's it. I'm also reworking some stuff with the website that I have. I do have a Patreon that I'm developing.
Okay, what is the website address?
Trying to work. There is also the spot that we do work. I forgot to mention that. Hold up, Wendy, help me out.
Oh,
Help
the
me out.
Facebook page. Ancestral.
Ancestralhealing.com. Ancestral Healing. I was tripping. I was like, wait, what's going on? I can't remember. There is a page that you guys can check out. Let me go ahead and look that page up. Ancestral Indigenous Healing. I am the administrator there for it. It's a spot that has connected people from around the world, about 525 people total. Different people, especially people who have multi-nation ancestry. If you guys want to check it out, you can go here in order to join on and see the work we do. We celebrating who people are, celebrating their root system, celebrating the dances and the songs and our storytelling as well, so that people can know there's power in what we think and power in the stories we carry. And I will let you guys know as soon as the website is developed where you can follow me. You can also my Instagram. I have an Instagram, don't I? Yes, I do. Let me look it up real quick. Sorry. I've also been teaching all day, fam.
Before, Gabriel, the memory loss thing, the older you get, the worse it gets. You're like me, man. You're in training.
Stop. It's G Graves. I remember now. It's yeah. Some of the kids got mad at me. They saw I misspelled my PowerPoint and they were trying to say, Mr. Graves, something. I said, fam, that being said, I forget more things than you'll ever remember. So it's all good. But yeah, it's my Instagram is GGREA.
Oh, okay.
103. That's my
that's your okay. I just put your name. Hold on. So it's GGREAVES 103.
Yep.
Okay.
That's my Insta. And let me also give my TikTok also. My TikTok is, if you look me up, it is G squared.
G square?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
is
three.
Is that G-Dub 103? G-Dub 103. G-Dub 103. That's my Insta. You see anything they call G squared. That's my nickname, G squared. A lot of storytelling there too. I just shared some stuff.
Okay.
You see more stuff coming where I have everything collected. Keep me in prayer because between teaching and working with kids, it can be a lot to keep up with. But I'm thankful for people supporting me in that endeavor. And of course, Lonnie and Wendy have shared with me before in the museum world, also in other spaces as well. So they know, how busy things can get when you're doing documentary history. I wish I should have Akindele. And they call Akindele. I gotta call him up soon. I gotta get golly. He reached out to me. He encouraged me, by the way, on my journey to Japan and said, I know you love your Gullah roots and you should, and we stand with that in the Sierra Leone connection, but bruh, you got to lean in on that Bayesian Jamaican ancestor, that Cromanti root. That's also part of the conversation. You got to lean into all your ancestors. There's a story there before you go. And everything I showed you tonight was what I learned when I went. Confirmation that I was divinely sent to find out about the things that my ancestors already carried.
Very cool.
So,
well,
yeah.
Gabriel, thank you so much. And everyone on here, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been amazing, absolutely amazing. So definitely looking forward to next month. We don't know who we're going to have yet. If y'all have any suggestions, let me know. But we're here every month. And Gabriel, again, thank you for adding to this, rich, history that is a part of all of us, whether we actually are part of the Black Seminole community or are allies or just interested in the history. I think it's so important to just talk. Like you said, we need more forums like this. So thank you for being the voice tonight and opening up the dialogue.
Thank you. It's an honor and privilege. Love you guys. We are the ones we've been waiting for.
Exactly. All
We
right,
continue.
everyone.
That's a promise, not a threat. No.
I'm always afraid with you, Lonnie. I never know.
He's a real one. You get the real,
Yeah.
real
All
one.
right, everyone. Well, have a good night and thank you again.
Cool. Shalom, fam. Love y'all. Peace, peace.
Icholaga. Nia, peace.
That was fun. That was really fun. Whew.
Gabriel, if you're interested, thank you so much for this presentation, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're interested in joining our Afro-Seminole Creole revitalization program, let me know.
I would love that. Please do. How do I do that? What's that look like?
Well, we have your email, so I think we can invite you into anything where we're keeping people updated about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm at my parents' house and I forgot how to turn off their light, and so it's so I'm just like in darkness.
I feel the struggles where I get it, man. I get it. But
Yeah.
dude, I love that, man. Yeah, I would love that.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It was great meeting you, and thank you so much this was really inspiring.
Are we friends on Facebook, by the way?
I don't think so, but I can add you.
Let's do that. Let's do that. Let me do it. That'll be awesome.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Bye.
Peace, man. Shalom. Whew, man. That was cool. Okay, dear God. Mishka, you still here? Thank you. That's cool. Let me make sure about something real quick. Make sure I have that. I think we're good. Okay, got all those books. Yeah, cool. Sweet. Praise God. All right. How do I exit out of this thing? Ignore that. Yeah.